Is on? Yeah, great. Thank you very much. It's great to be back here. Really invited to create action, to work, to take you to the next level. And thank you, Minister Popovic, for your invitation and for everybody here to come to learn and talk about how we're going to grow Serbia as a startup ecosystem that is powerful and create jobs and economic growth. I can see why it's difficult to lead this, because the buttons are very small. And I think I pressed the wrong button, right? Full screen? Yeah. Thank you. Technical difficulties today. So we have started this work a long time ago, last year, at the beginning of the year, really understanding how the ecosystem. I guess I'm always pressing the wrong button. Thank you again. Aha. But before I talk about that, I want to reiterate a little bit of what we heard today, which is like the global startup revolution is becoming the #1 sector of our economies. It's now about 4% of our economy, but the most important is that it's growing 3 to 4 times faster than the rest of our economies. And startups have become the #1 creator of jobs. It's no longer large corporations. If you look at this chart, right, the big dip is for corporations during recession, shedding more jobs than they create during economic growth. So entrepreneurs is the way of the future if we want to create jobs for our communities. Unfortunately, there's huge disparity between cities in having jumped on this new era of entrepreneurship and of innovation. So you see San Francisco so far high, it's scary. And I live in San Francisco, been in Silicon Valley for 23 years. And we hurt because we're creating so much value, right? There's too much disparity. A lot of my friends who are not part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem have been kicked out to Oakland because it's too expensive. So believe me, we want to help you flatten this curve. All of us are in the same boat. We want to create more inclusion, more diversity, and more success all over the world. This is our mission at Startup Genome. And when we talk about you starting to grow your ecosystem, right, catching up, Remy said, you don't want to fall behind because it's hard to catch up. Well, the truth is, most of us have fallen behind. I'm from Canada. I'm from a small region in the north of Quebec that is dying for lack of entrepreneurship. So when I look at this curve, we're working in Seoul. Seoul is around here. City of 10 million people, leading in electronics. Right? The #1 R&D center in the world, the best at it, according to Bloomberg, several years in a row. But they're in this flat part of the curve. They're wondering the same thing. How do we do better? How do we catch up? So you're in good company. It's normal. It's difficult to do. And how do we do it is not just by helping, the startups that you see on the chart earlier that are VC funded in Series A, Series B, and create big exits. It's about first growing to create more entrepreneurs. This is what we call the enabling factors. How do I get more students, more graduates to come and participate as entrepreneurs, as talent? And secondly, then, how do I increase the rate of success? How do I make better entrepreneurs out of them, better talent, so that they create more jobs, scale-ups, economic growth? So size matters, right? More entrepreneurs, more exits. Here's the size and number of startups all over the world in all the cities that we study. 75 cities, most of the big ones. And you can see that the exit value, which is a good proxy for economic impact, really accelerates as you grow. So this is very important. The left side of the bar, of the chart, the diagram earlier, creating more entrepreneurs. This is very important. When I look at where you are on the chart of ecosystem value and size, you can see you're fairly small compared to the top 30 ecosystems. But now it's about action. So the first thing we did is really come here and understand the entrepreneurs and the leaders of the organization supporting them, and really understand what's going on, what is missing. And in order to understand that, you need the yardsticks of what succeeded elsewhere. So we created the largest research in the world in these, in understanding startup ecosystem, starting in 2011 with Steve Blank from Stanford University, and one of the greatest entrepreneurs who created a lot of the Bibles of how do you build a startup. And so with that study, now we have the yardstick to say, okay, this is normally low at your stage. This is abnormally low. You need to take action on this. So really looking at it. And because the yardsticks are very important, because it's all about global competition, right? As you heard earlier, it's not about selling to your fellow citizens. It's about really going global, selling to the region and the rest of the world. So in order to be able to do this, you need to compare yourself and know what are the other ones that are succeeding, how are they compared to us, so we can learn what's missing. And finally, it's about knowing what to do. And at this point, we know what to do. The question is, how do we do it? How do we take action? How do we work with the government to really initiate big programs like YOSMA and come together with them so that the private sector can take over? So it's not a way here to show the growth of startup ecosystem. We develop the roadmap of how an ecosystem evolves. Belgrade is at the beginning. It goes from activation to globalization. At the beginning, activation means I need to activate my resources, my investors, my entrepreneurs, my talent, my supporters, and get them to grow the community first before I develop skills to globalize, to learn how to take global markets. So I talk a lot about action because that's where we're here today. We've delivered our report. We've started defining policy, and it's about now initiating them. But some good work has been done, and you have the chance here with Minister Popovich to have an entrepreneur himself who gets it and who wants to get things done and knows how to get things done. That's what we're good at as entrepreneurs. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I started this thinking, we need to get out of research. We need to get to action. We need to start creating impact together with the people we work with. But you have a lot to build on. Startup output, so the startup ecosystem is growing rapidly, so more startups, as I said, very important. Early stage funding, there's some programs that have started to inject capital into startups. The funder community has a lot of, a good amount of funders who have traveled the world and know what are the needs and the technologies that are being developed elsewhere. That's an asset to build on. And finally, you have good enabling policies and support programs that have been put in place. But there's a lot more to be done than has been done. So now it's about coming together with the government to initiate, just like YOSMA program. You saw an initiation of a program, but rapidly, the program was all about getting the private sector to act, right? And enabling them, go from 0 to 1. And then, as Rami said, right, the second funds, we didn't need the government anymore. They did the right job, right? They just gave a little push. Let's go from 0 to 1 and let them go. Let the private sector take over. So that's a very good lesson. So these are the 3 objectives that we have for Serbia. Really continue to grow the number of startups rapidly. Increase early stage funding, right? You heard about YOSMA, that was all about that. But thirdly, increase startup quality. So what you've heard today was a lot about funding because they're venture capitalists. But actually Israel took a lot more actions on number 3. How do we create support programs? When I visited Tel Aviv a few years ago, they took me to all of the programs, all of the support, the accelerators, incubators, and other programs that they've created, and the new ones. They didn't start innovating. And one of them were so impressed with that, let's start it, let's get it done elsewhere. So this was really the way Tel Aviv developed, is number 2, but number 3. Right? How do we support our entrepreneurs? How do we create more entrepreneurs who know how to build a startup? Capital is not enough. So And so we put it on a roadmap, right? And I always put this chart because the first time I created it, people in government and in the private sector said, this is your most important chart, what not to do. Everybody tries to do too much, and that's kind of what we brought at Startup Genome to the world of policy, is focus. Stop trying to try to do everything in year 1 and 2. Let's do 2 or 3 things, max, and delay the rest. But I need to tell you what not to do if I want you not to do it, right? So don't work on globalization yet, global connectedness, global market reach, too early. Don't work on late stage funds, don't work on global resource attraction. We need to build local first. So discipline leads to more impact. That's what we've learned working with all of these cities and countries all over the world. So the first step is increasing pre-seed and seed funding, but really using this to develop good investors. And we talk about angel groups. A lot of the world 20, 25 years ago started acting at the VC level, Series A. And these cities had the chance that they were the first to act. Yozma worked very well and didn't work so well when it was developed 5 years ago because they were the first to do it. And so VCs from the US said, yeah, I'll go work in Israel, I'll bring my expertise, I'll bring some money. But it doesn't work anymore. Now you have to work a little earlier, right? At the angels that are the first to start investing, to put some money in, but also bring with them experience. Right? These angels that are entrepreneurs themselves, maybe not in tech, but they are doers, they get it, they get how to build a business. And they're the first one that start helping the founders to know what is the way, what is the path, what is the most important. Not technology grant, that governments do so much and give money, but cannot help the startups think about the business side of things. And Serbia has great technology, great technologists. Now we need to form entrepreneurs, business people. So this starts with develop quality angel groups and then mentorship and support programs. So this is a chart that shows the problem of Series A versus seed. Right? A lot of cities and countries look at this chart and say, there's a big gap at Series A. Right? And they don't even map the gap at seed. They just map and they say, 80% gap at Series A. We need to put more money in VCs. But when you normalize this curve at seed, you can see, and that's for Hong Kong, a lot of capital in Hong Kong. You can see that the biggest gap was pre-seed, right? It's about entering the funnel. And when we map this funnel, starting at percentage of seed-funded startups versus percentage of exits, you can see how radical the relationship is. It cannot be clearer. Right? If you don't start funding enough startups to give them the fuel to learn and to develop high potential startups, you don't get exits at the end. And of course, it's a chicken and egg problem, right? The investors want to invest in the best startups, and that's why VCs are not very good at the beginning. Right? Josh Lerner, who we work with from Harvard Business School, says, you know, angels are much better at spreading the money around than VCs. VCs are great at picking the winners, or some that might be winners. So, and the investors all want to invest in the best startups. But to get the best startups, you need to have great quality. But to have great quality, you need funding, because if you don't get money to start hiring people and developing and start working on your customers, you never get good at it. So it's a chicken and egg problem, and that's why the government's role is to go from 0 to 1. How do you start the machine to turn? So we talked about growing the startups by enlarging the funnel. So you seed some money at the pre-seed level so that more good minds, good entrepreneurs want to jump in and say, okay, you de-risk my path as an entrepreneur because you're giving me 20K. Right? You're giving me support. So now I want to do the first step. Right? Develop angel groups to be able to make the decision. Who's a good team? Right? This is the right model. Right? You invest in people first. And yes, you invest in business models. Business model innovation is more important than technology now. Thirdly, do you have a good technology? It needs to work, it needs to be stable, all of that. but developing angels that have done it before themselves. Hopefully they came from tech, or some of them, and they can start this mentorship. And finally, mentoring more of them. So we've created programs to really use this funding policy to bring more mentorships and programs to help the startups, the founders become good entrepreneurs, good business people, good leaders. So using the fund to create deal flow for early stage investors who feel like now it's de-risk, I want to start. Even though Serbia is at an early stage ecosystem, the rate of success, the size of success would be lower. The government de-risked it, so I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna start helping. I'm gonna start putting some money myself even. Then using that money to also help accelerators have a sidecar fund so that they can attract more deal flow. The best startups saying, okay, I don't only applying to get courses and training, but I also get money. So now better startups would be applying. And then finally, an RFP to attract great projects for accelerators. So on the left side is really this funding and some grants to de-risk and start the process, but managed by the angel groups. Pre-seed and seed funds, so a sidecar fund so that they can have more money. But really, as you can see at the bottom, government being a fraction of that money. Really bring the private investors right away in, just like Yozma. And doing the same with accelerators, giving them a fund so they can start investing in those better startups that they decided to invest knowledge in. And on the other side, it's really this mentor startup matchmaking, not letting the angels just be investors, but invite them to mentor, to bring their expertise as people who have been successful in business to their startups. And of course, the accelerators, that's the core of the program. But for both programs, really using funding to bring what startups here need most, which is know-how, mentorship, not just money. There's other things to be done, of course. Right? We need to train those angels. It's very hard to be an angel investor. I'm an angel investor, but I try to invest only in what I know very, very well, because I know that it's very risky, and I'm not a very good angel investor. I've made just a few investments in my life. So we need to give them the training. Even though they're good entrepreneurs themselves, being a good investor is completely different. Second is supporting the Keystone organization. And here we see Digital Startup as this organization that helps everyone, that is there to help the accelerators, to help the incubators, to help the universities, to help to work with the government, to help the entrepreneurs directly. So this is very important to have a Keystone organization that now has a bigger mandate to go and bring the students inside, bring the graduates inside the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Not let them just develop technologies, and not let them see the path of being an employee as the #1 track. Third is creating a center of gravity, right? Creating an innovation center where the angel group can have an office, the accelerators can have an office, a co-working space. Having more gravity helps entrepreneurs talk to each other, help each other, and get help from others around them. That's very important. And finally, Series A funding policy, just like Yozma. But at this day and age, you need to start earlier. We know that now. So this is going to be the next step, creating something like the Yozma program. How do you create a VC industry in Serbia? So I invite you to really be present and active in working and supporting action that the government wants to take, and really executing with them, because it's not about the government executing. Government is about initiating and helping you start, de-risking, supporting, so that you start leading the growth of the startup ecosystem. Thank you.